Ogre Madhu tipped the bottle slowly, on purpose, and let the whole thing pour out across the floor he had just told the new trainee to clean. The water spread between the desks. The young man went down on one knee with a rag, in front of everybody, and started wiping. Nobody laughed louder than Gozi. She filmed it on her phone, holding it sideways like it was something worth keeping. "On your knees suits you," Madhu said. Loud enough for the back of the office to hear. "When you were born, your people already knew this is where you would end. Wipe well. That is the only thing your hands are good for." The trainee did not answer. 3 weeks he had been there. 3 weeks of being sent for water, for files, for nothing. Of being spoken to like a stray dog that had wandered into a place too clean for it. He just kept wiping, slow and steady, his face giving away nothing at all. Only one person in that whole room had a knot in her stomach watching it. Adeyeze Nwankwo gripped the edge of her desk and did not sit back down. But here is the thing nobody filming, nobody laughing, nobody pouring water on the floor had any idea about. The man on his knees with a rag in his hand could buy that entire building twice before lunch. And the day he stood up, the people grinning over him would learn exactly what it costs to mistake a quiet man for a weak one. So grab your popcorn, sit back, and enjoy. To understand how a man like that ended up on his knees in front of people who were not fit to carry his shoes, we have to go back 3 weeks. To a different city. To a very big house in Owerri, where the morning was quiet, and the man sitting at the long dining table was not smiling. Chief Obiora Adigwe was 71 years old. He had built Adigwe Holdings from one rented warehouse with a leaking roof into a company with branches in 5 cities, and he had buried a wife and survived 2 business partners who tried to ruin him. People who met him expected a loud man. He was not loud. He was the kind of quiet that made loud men nervous. In front of him, on the polished table, sat a brown envelope. Inside that envelope were 11 letters, anonymous letters. They had come over 4 months from junior workers at the Enugu branch. Cleaners, drivers, trainees, filing clerks. People at the very bottom of the company he had spent his life building. The letters all said different things, but underneath, they said the same thing. At the Enugu branch, if you were small, you were nothing. Workers were being made to stay until 10 and 11 at night with no extra pay. People were being insulted in ways that had nothing to do with work. And the official complaint box, the one Chief Adigwe had personally ordered to be installed in every branch, the one that was supposed to come straight to head office, was being emptied by the very people the complaints were about. The letters were sneaked out by hand, because that was the only way they could reach him. Chief Adigwe read the last letter again. It was short. It was written by somebody who clearly had not gone far in school, and that broke his heart more than the long ones. "Sir," it said, "we are not asking for money. We are only asking to be treated like human beings. That is all. Please, sir." He set it down. He pressed his thumb and finger into the corners of his eyes for a moment. Then he picked up his phone and called the one person in the world he trusted with this, his son. Ikenna Adigwe was 34. He had spent 6 years studying and working abroad, came home, and instead of demanding a corner office and a title, he had quietly learned the company from the bottom up because his father insisted on it. He had loaded trucks. He had sat in the accounts department for a year. He knew the difference between how a company looked on paper and how it smelled on the ground. "Ikenna," Chief Adigwe said when the call connected, "I need you to do something for me, and you are not going to like it. Tell me." "Sir, Enugu branch is rotten. Not the numbers. The numbers are fine. That is the problem. That is how it hid so long. It is rotten in the way people there treat one another. I cannot send an audit team. The moment a suit walks through that door, everybody will smile and behave like a church choir, and the rot will just hide and wait. I need eyes that nobody knows are eyes. There was a pause on the line. Ikenna already knew where this was going. You want me to go in? I want you to go in as nothing, his father said. A trainee, bottom of the ladder. A different name, a small face nobody at that branch has ever seen. 90 days. You watch, you write down what you see, you say nothing. Then you come home and you tell me whether I should clean that branch or burn it down and start again. Ikenna leaned back in his chair in his apartment in Enugu, the city where, by chance, he already lived. He looked out the window at the traffic far below. 90 days as a trainee, he said slowly. Father, do you know what they pay a trainee? I know exactly what I pay a trainee, Chief Adigwe said. 47,300 naira a month, and I want you to live on it. Move out of that big apartment. Rent something a real trainee on that salary would rent. Eat what they eat. Take the bus they take. If you live like me while you watch them, you will see nothing. Because the suffering will not touch you. It will just be a film you are watching. Live it, my son. Then you will understand. Ikenna was quiet for a long time. Outside, a Danfo bus screamed its horn at nobody. All right, he said finally. I will do it. But not because of the company. Because of that last letter you read me. Nobody should have to beg to be treated like a person. That, said Chief Adigwe softly, is exactly why I am sending you and not somebody else. So it was settled. A man worth more money than most of the people in that branch would see in 10 lifetimes packed 2 bags, left the apartment with the marble floor, and rented a single room in Ugwoba, on the rough side of Enugu, where the road turned to red mud when it rained, and the landlord wanted 3 months in advance in cash. The room had one window that did not close all the way, a bed, a plastic chair, a small table, a bucket. The walls had been painted a long time ago by somebody who ran out of paint halfway and never came back to finish. At night, the room held the heat of the day like a closed fist. The first night, Ikenna lay on that bed and listened to a couple arguing in the next room about who had finished the kerosene, and he thought, this is what 47,300 naira buys. And he had a bank account, and a father, and a way out. The people whose letters brought him here had none of those things. He chose a name. Ike Nwosu. Simple. Forgettable. The kind of name you could shout across an office without anyone looking up twice. And on a Monday morning, at 7:40, in a shirt he had deliberately bought second-hand and ironed until the collar went soft, Ike Nwosu walked into the Enugu branch of Adigwe Holdings to begin a 90-day trainee contract under a manager who had no idea he was about to spend 3 weeks insulting the heir to the entire company. The branch took up 4 floors of a glass building near the center of the city. Ike was put on the 3rd floor, in the operations section, given an employee number, 30419, and a desk that had been pushed so far into the corner that the man sitting there had the photocopier humming at his back all day, and the door to the storeroom rattling beside his head. His supervisor was a senior officer named Ifeanyi Madu. Everybody called him Oga Madu, and they called him that with their shoulders slightly hunched, the way you say the name of something that might turn around. He had been at the branch for 9 years. He had a soft, heavy body and a hard, dry face, and he had learned a long time ago that the easiest way to feel big is to find people you are allowed to make small. Within the first hour, Madu had looked Ike up and down, taken in the soft collar and the cheap shoes, and decided exactly what he was. You, he said, not bothering with the name on the file. Trainee. Stand up when I am talking to you. Ike stood. You see this office? This is not your father's compound where you can sit anyhow. People here have worked years to sit where they are sitting. You? You are starting from below the floor, so when I send you, you move. When I talk, you answer, yes, sir. Are we understanding each other? Yes, sir, Ike said. Good. Go and bring me water from downstairs. Not the warm one. the cold one. And if it is warm, you are going back down. Ike went. As he walked to the stairs, he heard Madhu say to the woman at the next desk, loud enough to carry, "These trainees they send us now. No home training." You can see suffering on his face from morning. And the woman in Ngozi laughed the way a person laughs when laughing is the safest thing to do. That was the first morning. By the end of the first week, Ike Nwosu had a notebook, a small one that fit in his back pocket. And in that notebook, in handwriting that nobody would ever connect to a man who signed million-naira documents, he had begun to write things down. Monday. Driver, Sunday. Told to stay till 9:40 p.m. to wash Madhu's personal car. Not company work, no extra pay. Tuesday. Madhu shouted at the cleaner, Mama Grace, in front of clients, because the floor she had mopped 1 hour before had one footprint on it. Called her a useless old woman. Wednesday. 2 trainees made to stay till 10 p.m. doing filing that was not urgent. When one said his mother was sick, Madhu said, "Then your mother should have sent you to school, instead of sending you here to disturb me." He wrote the times. He wrote them exactly the way his father had taught him. A thing badly remembered is a thing that can be argued away. 10:41, 9:15, 8:50. The little specific numbers were the difference between a story and a fact, and Ike Nwosu was building facts. And in the middle of all of it, like one clean thing in a dirty room, there was Adieze Nwankwo. Adieze worked in records, 2 desks down. She was maybe 28, with the kind of face that did not perform for anybody. The first time Ike noticed her was not because she did anything dramatic. It was because of how she said good morning to the cleaner. Most people in that office walked past Mama Grace as though she were part of the wall. Adieze stopped every single morning and said, "Good morning, Mama. How is the body today?" And she waited for the answer. She actually waited. And Mama Grace, who got shouted at by Madhu and ignored by everyone else, lit up like a small lamp every time. Because in a building full of people who looked through her, one person looked at her. On Ike's 3rd day, he could not find the right form to log an incoming shipment. And he had asked 2 people who both pretended not to hear him, because helping the trainee earned you nothing. Adieze saw him standing there with the same paper for 10 minutes. She got up, came over, and showed him without making him feel stupid about it. "Don't mind them," she said quietly, sliding the right file across. "Everybody here forgets they were once new. You will learn it in 2 days. Then you will be helping the next person. That is how it should work." "Thank you," Ike said. And then, because he was a man trained to watch people, he watched her go back to her desk, and he thought, "She has nothing to gain from helping me, and she helped me anyway. Write that one down too." He did not write it down. Some things you keep in a different place. There was one more thing he learned that first week, and it was the thing that turned the whole job in his chest from an assignment into something personal. He learned it from Mama Grace, of all people, in the small kitchen on the 3rd floor, where she was washing cups and he was waiting for Madhu's cold water. "You are a good boy," Mama Grace said to him, out of nowhere. "I can see it. You don't have that thing in your eyes the others have." She dried a cup. "Be careful of that, Madhu. Especially be careful for the sake of that girl." "Adieze." "What about Adieze?" Ike asked. He kept his voice flat, but his attention sharpened like a knife. Mama Grace looked at the door, then lowered her voice. "Some months back, that man troubled her. You understand me? Troubled her. He would call her into his office for nothing. He put his hand on her one time, when nobody was looking. She is a strong girl. She pushed him, and she reported it. She wrote a complaint, dropped it in the box on the wall, the one that is supposed to go to the big men in Owerri." Mama Grace made a small, bitter sound. Nothing happened. Nothing. The complaint disappeared like water on a hot stone. And since that day, Madhu has been waiting, slowly, to make her regret that she ever opened her mouth. Ike stood very still. The cup of cold water in his hand was sweating onto his fingers. The complaint box, the one his father had personally ordered installed, the one being emptied by the very people the complaints were about. He had come to Enugu chasing 11 anonymous letters, and here, 2 desks from where he sat every day, was the woman whose strangled voice was somewhere underneath all of them. "Who empties that box, Mama?" he asked. Mama Grace looked at him as though the answer was so obvious. It was almost funny. "Who else?" she said. "Madhu has the key." That night, in his hot little room in Ugwoba, Ike Nwosu did not sleep. He sat on the edge of the thin bed and turned his phone over and over in his hand. He could end it tomorrow. One phone call. His father would have Madhu marched out of that building by security before the man finished his breakfast. But that was the easy thing, and the easy thing would solve one room and leave the house rotten. Madhu was one man. The system that let Madhu happen, the buried complaints, the key in the wrong hand, the 11 people too frightened to use their own names, that was the real disease. If he revealed himself now, he would cut off one weed and never find the root. He had to wait. He had to let the 90 days run, gather everything, document it so completely that when the truth came, it would not just remove one Madhu, but make it impossible for the next Madhu to ever do the same thing. He understood all of that with the cold, clear part of his mind. The problem was the other part. The part that had watched Adeze wait for an old woman's answer. The part that already could not stand the idea of that man sitting in his office with the key to her stolen voice in his drawer. Smiling, Ike opened the notebook. Under the day's date, he wrote one line that was not for the report at all. She reported him and they buried it. Fix this, not as the chairman's son, as a person who knows. The second week, Ike made a decision that he wrote into his report in plain words, because he wanted it on record and he wanted his own conscience clear. He wrote, "I am removing myself from any assessment of the records unit where Adeze Nwankwo works to avoid bias. My feelings about her conduct cannot be allowed to influence my report on this branch." He underlined it. He did not fully admit to himself yet why he needed that sentence to exist. But a careful man builds the wall before he knows which flood is coming. Because the truth, the one he was only beginning to feel, was this. Ike Nwosu had spent his whole adult life being looked at in a particular way. Women smiled at him differently once they knew the name Adigwe. Men's handshakes changed. He had grown so used to it that he had stopped believing anybody could see him at all. Only the size of his father's company standing behind him, like a shadow he could never step out of. Adeze did not know any of that. To her, he was a struggling trainee in a soft collared shirt who did not know where the shipment forms were. And she was kind to him anyway. Kind for no reason. Kind with nothing to gain. For the first time in years, somebody was being good to the man. And not to the money. And he had not known how starved he was for that, until it was placed, unasked, in front of him. Who would have been horrified to learn how much she had given him with one cup of shared lunch and one patient explanation of a filing system. They began to talk. Small things. At first, only at the photocopier, or in the queue for the one working microwave, or on the stairs when the lift was broken, which was often. She told him she was the firstborn of 5, that her father had died when she was 19, and she had more or less raised her younger ones, that she took this job because it was steady, and steady was the only luxury she had ever wanted. He told her a version of himself, a true version, just with the most important fact removed. He told her he had lost his footing for a while, that he was trying to rebuild, that he was managing. All of it was true. He had lost his footing, in a way. He was rebuilding something. He was managing on 47,300 naira and learning every day how thin that line was. "You don't talk like a small boy," she told him once, studying his face on the stairwell. You talk like somebody who has seen things. I can't place you. Maybe I have just been quiet a long time, he said. Quiet ones are the dangerous ones, she said, and she smiled and went back up the stairs, and did not know how close to the bone she had cut. Madhu noticed, of course. Men like Madhu have radar for exactly two things. People above them they must flatter, and people below them they can crush. And he had decided weeks ago that the trainee was a thing to be crushed. And now he saw the one woman he had never forgiven for saying no to him being warm to that thing, and something old and ugly woke up in him. The slap that started this story did not come out of nowhere. It came at the end of a week that Madhu spent slowly turning the heat up. On Monday, he made Ike refile an entire cabinet that was already filed correctly, then accused him of disorganizing it, then made him do it again. On Tuesday, he sent him out in the rain to buy his lunch, and then said the rice was cold and made him go back. On Wednesday, in front of the whole floor, he held up a report. Ike had typed perfectly and said, "Did your village school not teach you to spell? Or did they teach you nothing because they already knew you would only ever be carrying my files?" Gozi laughed. A few others laughed because not laughing was its own kind of danger. And Ike took it. All of it. He took it the way a man takes a storm he knows will end, his face a closed door, because he had a notebook and a plan and a deeper game. He told himself the patience was strategy. It was strategy. But somewhere in that week, it also stopped being only strategy and started being something harder. Because every insult Madhu threw at the trainee was an insult he had thrown 100 times at people who could not document it, could not wait it out, could not call their father. Cleaners, drivers, real trainees with sick mothers. Ike was sitting inside their lives now, and the rage he kept off his face was no longer just for himself. Thursday afternoon, the water. Madhu came back from a long lunch in a bad mood. And a man like that, in a bad mood, goes looking. He found Ike at the corner desk, working. He picked up a half-full bottle of water from a nearby table. "This your corner is dirty," he announced. "Look at this floor." The floor was clean. Mama Grace had mopped it 90 minutes before. Madhu unscrewed the cap, walked over, and tipped the bottle out across the floor, slowly, watching Ike's face the whole time. The water spread between the desks and pooled around the legs of the corner desk. "Now it is dirty," Madhu said. "Clean it, on your knees. Like the cleaner you will end up as when this company finally throws you out." That was the moment from the beginning of our story. The trainee on one knee with a rag. Ngozi's phone held sideways, the whole floor watching. And Madhu standing over a kneeling man, saying the thing about being born to it, about his hands being good for nothing else. Ike wiped the floor, slow and steady. His face gave nothing. Inside, the cold part of his mind was saying, "Almost there. 3 more weeks, document it, let it run." And the other part of his mind, the part that had heard Mama Grace in the kitchen, the part that had watched Adeyeze wait for an old woman's good morning, the other part was a wall holding back a sea. He finished. He stood up. He folded the wet rag with a calm that, looking back, several people would describe as the strangest thing they ever saw, because it was the calm of a man who had done something. "Are you satisfied, sir?" he asked. Quiet. Even. And maybe it was the word satisfied, or maybe it was the steadiness in it that refused to break, but something in Ike's quiet enraged Madhu more than shouting ever could have. Because a man who pours water on the floor to make you small needs you to look small, and Ike, kneeling, had never once looked small. "You are mocking me," Madhu said. His voice dropped. "You think you are clever. A common trainee eating from my hand, and you want to mock me in my own office." He stepped close. "Apologize now. On your knees again. Say sorry, sir, I am nothing." "I cleaned the floor, sir," Ike said. "I will not say I am nothing, because I am not." The office had gone completely silent. The photocopier hummed. Somewhere a phone rang and nobody picked it. And Madhu, who had spent 9 years never once being told no by anyone smaller than him, drew back his hand and slapped Ike Nwosu's across the face. It was the slap from the beginning, the one that froze 30 people at the same breath. The one that made the woman by the printer drop her files, except it was not the woman by the printer who moved first. It was Adaze. Her chair scraped back so hard it nearly fell. She was across that floor before the sound of the slap had finished bouncing off the glass, and she put herself between Madhu and Ike, her back to Ike, facing the senior officer with her chin up and her whole body shaking with a fury she did not bother to hide. "Have you finished?" she said. "Have you completely finished? You poured water on a clean floor to make a grown man kneel, and now you are slapping him because he would not call himself nothing? Is this what 9 years in this company made you, Ades?" Madhu's voice was a warning. "Sit down. This does not concern you. Go back to your records before you say something you cannot take back." "It concerns me," she said, "because I am standing in it. You will not touch him again." "Or what?" Madhu said softly, and now there was something worse than anger in his face. There was memory. "Or you will report me? Like last time?" He let the words land. "How did last time go for you, eh? You wrote your nice complaint. You put it in your nice box. And nothing happened. Nothing will happen this time either. You are a clerk. He is a trainee. And I am the one who decides who eats in this office. So sit down, my dear, before you lose the only thing you have." It was the cruelest thing he could have said, because it was true, or it had always been true, until this exact moment. And everyone in that office knew it was true. And the silence afterward was the silence of people watching a woman be reminded of her own smallness. Adeza did not sit down. She was frightened. You could see it in the way her hands had closed into fists at her sides, in the breath she had to take before she could speak. She had a sick mother and 4 siblings, and a salary that disappeared by the 20th of every month. And the man in front of her could end all of it with one signature, and he had done it before in his own way. And she knew exactly what she stood to lose. She did not sit down. "Then I lose it standing up," she said. "But you will not slap him in front of me and have me sit quiet like it is normal. It is not normal. It was never normal. You just made everybody so afraid that they forgot." And behind her, Ike Nwosu, the chairman's son, stood with a red mark blooming on his cheek and his whole chest aching. Not from the slap. The slap was nothing, but from the sight of a woman with everything to lose, putting her body between him and a powerful man. For a trainee she believed could give her nothing in return. Right then, he nearly did it. He nearly said the words that would have ended everything. 3 weeks early, plan be damned. The words were in his mouth. But Madhu, seeing that the whole floor was watching, seeing that something had shifted, that the fear in the room had a crack in it now, made the calculation that bullies make. He smiled a thin smile, picked up his jacket and said, "Both of you. I will deal with you both. Enjoy your last weeks here," and he walked out. Because a man like that always needs to leave on what he tells himself is his own terms. The office let out its breath. People found things to look at. Ngozi quietly deleted the video off her phone. Adaze turned around. Up close, she saw the mark on his face, and something in her broke open. "Are you all right? Let me see." She reached up, almost touched the red place, pulled her hand back. "That man, that wicked man. Come and sit. Don't mind him. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Ike said. And then, very quietly, in a voice that came from somewhere he had not planned, "You should not have done that." "Done what?" "Put yourself in front of that. For me. You have your mother, your brothers and sisters. You could have lost everything just now." For a trainee, Adaze looked at him as though he had said something genuinely stupid. "And if I had sat down," she said, "what would I have kept?" "A job, yes. And what else? I would have kept the thing inside me that lets a man do that to another person while I look at my desk. I would rather lose the job than keep that thing. She shook her head. You don't understand. The day I let fear decide what is right, I have already lost the most important thing I own. Money I can chase again. That, no. There are sentences a person hears that rearrange the furniture inside them. Ike Nwosu had grown up surrounded by people who calculated everything, who measured every kindness against what it would return, who had taught him without meaning to that the world ran on advantage. And here was a clerk on 40-something thousand naira a month, telling him she would rather be poor and whole than safe and hollow, and meaning every word, and having just proved it with her own body. "Come to my place after work," she said, gathering herself businesslike again, because she could see he was rattled and she did not want to embarrass him by watching too closely. "I will give you ice for that face, and we will talk about what you do now, because that man is not finished, and you need to be ready." That evening, in Adese's tiny flat, which she shared with 2 of her younger siblings, in a corner of the sitting room, where she had set 2 stools, because there was nowhere else, she pressed a cloth of ice against Ike's cheek and told him the thing that became the heart of the whole story. "Let me tell you what I learned," she said, "the hard way. After he troubled me and I reported it and nothing happened." She sat back on her stool. "I learned that silence is the food these people eat. Madhu is not strong. He has never been strong. He is just standing in a room full of people who have all agreed to be quiet, and the quiet is what holds him up. Every person who looks at their desk while he shouts, every person who laughs because it is safer to laugh, every single one of them is a brick in the wall he stands on. The day enough of them stop being bricks, he falls. He is nothing without our silence." Ike listened. He had auditors and lawyers and consultants whose whole job was to understand systems, and not one of them had ever explained a corrupt office to him as clearly as this woman did on a stool with a melting cloth of ice. "And the other thing I learned," she went on, "is that fighting them with feelings alone is how you lose. I cried in his office, I shouted, I was right, and none of that mattered, because I had nothing written down. No date, no time, no witness who would speak. Just my word against his, and in that office my word weighed nothing. If I could go back, I would not have shouted first. I would have written everything. Every time, every date, the exact hour, who saw it. Because these men can argue with your tears forever. They cannot argue with a record." Ike sat very still, the ice cold against his cheek, and he thought of the small notebook in his back pocket. The one with the dates, the times. 10:41, 9:15, 8:50. Driver Sunday, 9:40 p.m., washing the car. Mama Grace, useless old woman, in front of clients. 2 trainees, 10 p.m., sick mother. He had been building exactly the thing she was describing. And he had a missing piece, the biggest one, that he had not known he had until Mama Grace told him in the kitchen. "A daze," he said slowly. "Your complaint, the one that disappeared. Do you remember when you wrote it? The date?" She frowned. "Why? Just do you remember?" "Of course I remember. It was the 14th of March. I will never forget that date as long as I live." She studied him, that searching look again. "Ike, why are you asking me about a dead complaint?" He could not tell her. Not yet. Not without telling her all of it, and he was not ready, and she was not ready, and the timing had to be right, or the whole thing would blow up in a way that helped nobody. So he did the only thing he could. "Because I do not think it is dead," he said. "I think these things have a way of coming back, and I think you should not give up on it." She looked at him for a long moment, this strange, quiet trainee who asked questions like a man who knew something. And she decided, the way she had decided to stand up in the office, to trust her gut. "All right," she said. "I won't give up on it. That night, Ike walked the long way back to Ugwoba, through streets where generators coughed and roadside lamps lit small worlds of fried plantain and conversation, and he made his decision. The plan would still run. He would still document the system, not just the man. But Adeyeze's complaint, the 14th of March, the one Madhu had emptied out of the box and made disappear. That was the thread that connected the small, ugly office to the great rot his father had sent him to find. He was going to pull that thread until the whole thing unraveled. And he was going to do it with records, not tears. Because the woman with the melting ice had been right about that too. He called his father from the dark street. "Father, it is worse than the letters said. And it is also more solvable than you think, because I have found the keystone." He told him about the complaint box. The key in Madhu's drawer. The 14th of March. Send the audit team. Not next month. The end of my 90 days. But before they come, I want to pull the original complaints back. They did not destroy them. Men like Madhu never destroy, they hoard, because they think the paper is power in their hand. I would bet my name they are in his drawer or his house. I want them found. Officially, by people he cannot stop. There was a silence on his father's end, and then a sound Ikenna had not heard from the old man in a long time. A low, satisfied breath. "You went to find a sickness," Chief Adigwe said, "and you came back with the cure. Pull the thread, my son. I will send the team on the last day." And Ikenna. A pause. "This girl, Adaze. You speak her name differently from the others." "She does not know who I am, father." "I heard that part. That is not what I asked." Ikenna stood in the dark street and did not answer, and his father, being his father, did not need him to. The last week of the 90 days arrived. Madhu, true to his word, had spent it making both their lives a misery, piling impossible work, manufacturing reasons, circling. He had decided to end both of them and was only choosing the most humiliating way. He did not know he was a man standing on a trapdoor, sharpening a knife. It came to a head on a Friday morning. Ike was on his break. Finally, the first he had taken all week, standing with Adeze near the glass doors of the lobby, the two of them talking low, when Madhu spotted them and crossed the floor with the particular speed of a man who has been waiting all morning for a reason. "Nwosu," he said. "The onboarding files in the store. Go and bring them now." "I am on my break, sir," Ike said. "I will bring them in 15 minutes. It was such a small thing. It was the smallest possible thing. And that was exactly why it broke Madhu, because the smallness of it meant the trainee was no longer afraid. And a bully cannot survive being unafraid. "Who?" Madhu said very quietly. "Do you think you are?" And he reached out and grabbed the front of Ike's shirt, twisting the cheap cloth in his fist, pulling him close. Around them, the lobby went still. Workers stopped. A couple of clients near the reception desk turned to stare. "You miserable little nothing," Madhu breathed into his face. "You came here in rags. I gave you a chance, and you have done nothing but disrespect me. On your break. On your break. You don't have a break. You don't have anything. Everything you have, I gave you, and I can take it back this second." "Let go of my shirt, sir," Ike said. Still calm. Still even. It was, somehow, the calmest he had been all week. "Stop it!" Adeze had stepped forward, pushing at Madhu's arm. "Leave him! Have you gone mad?" "In the lobby, in front of clients. You are mad. Leave him now!" Madhu shoved her back with his free hand. Hard enough that she stumbled into the edge of the reception desk. And that, the sight of him putting his hands on her too, was the thing that finally moved past the wall in Ike's chest, and his own hand came up to grip Madhu's wrist with a strength that did not belong to a starving trainee. And for 1 second, something true flashed in Ike's eyes, something that made Madhu, deep in his animal brain, suddenly uncertain. And in that exact second, the glass doors of the lobby slid open, and the whole world changed. 2 cars had pulled into the forecourt outside. Not the kind of cars that came to that branch. Long, black, polished. The kind of car that makes a security guard stand up straight without being told. Men in dark suits stepped out of the first one and held the doors, and from the second car, unhurried, in a plain grey Agbada that somehow looked more expensive than anything anyone in that lobby had ever owned, stepped an old man. A few of the senior staff who had been to head office recognized him instantly, and the color ran out of their faces. "It is the chairman," someone whispered. The whisper moved across the lobby like a cold wind. "It is Chief Adigwe." Chief Obiora Adigwe walked into his own branch, the way a man walks into a room he owns, which is to say without hurrying for anyone, and his eyes, sharp as they had been at the dining table in Owerri, took in the whole scene at once. The clients pressed against the wall, the frozen workers, the young trainee with a torn shirt collar, and the senior officer with his fist still twisted in that collar, who had not yet turned around, who did not yet know. The chairman's gaze moved to the trainee, and it softened, just slightly, in a way that several people would later swear they saw and could not explain. "Ikena," Chief Adigwe said. His voice was not loud. It did not need to be. It crossed that silent lobby and landed in the very center of it. "My son, what is going on here?" The word son went off in that room like a glass dropped on marble. Madhu's fist was still in the shirt. He felt, before he understood, the floor tilt under him. Slowly, slowly, the way a man turns toward a sound he is praying, he misheard, he turned his head. The chairman was looking directly at the trainee, at Ike Nwosu, at the man Madhu had sent for water, sent for files, sent for lunch in the rain. The man Madhu had told to spell his name like a village boy. The man Madhu had poured water on the floor for and made kneel and slapped across the face and called nothing. "My son." "You," Madhu said. His voice had gone strange. His fist had loosened on the shirt without his telling it to. "You are. You." Ike Nwosu, who was Ikena Adigwe, gently took Madhu's slack hand off his collar, the way you remove the hand of a sleeping child, and stepped back and straightened the torn shirt with a dignity that the cheap cloth had never deserved. "Ikena Adigwe," he said quietly. "Operations trainee. Employee number 30419. A pause. 9 days I have worked under you, sir, on your floor. Plus 81 before that, watching." The lobby did not breathe, and no one in it was as still as Adeyeze Nwankwo, who stood frozen by the reception desk, one hand still pressed to her side where she had stumbled against it, staring at the man she had pressed ice to the night before. The man whose torn collar she had wanted to mend, the struggling trainee she had thrown her own livelihood in front of, twice, and who was, it turned out, the son of the man who owned the building, the company, the very floor under all their feet. Chief Adigwe came further into the lobby. His sharp old eyes settled on Madhu, and they were not soft now at all. "Ipini Madhu," he said. "Senior officer, 9 years. He let the years hang. For 4 months, letters have been reaching me at head office. Letters from people in this branch who were too frightened to use their own names. Drivers, cleaners, trainees. People who told me they were not asking for money. They were only asking to be treated like human beings." His voice did not rise, and that was somehow more terrible than if it had. "Do you know how those letters reached me, Madhu?" "By hand. Sneaked out. Because the complaint box I personally ordered to be installed on every floor of every branch, the box that was supposed to bring their words straight to me, was being emptied by the very man their words were about. You had the key. You have always had the key." "Sir," Madhu said. His legs were not holding him properly anymore. "Sir, there is a misunderstanding. These people, they exaggerate. I run a tight floor, that is all." "A tight floor, sir. I never." "You poured water on a clean floor this very week," said a clear voice, "and made him kneel to wipe it. And then you slapped him. I was there. The whole floor was there. It was a daze. Her voice was shaking, but it carried. She had found, somewhere under the shock, the same thing that had made her stand up before. Madhu rounded on her, the old reflex. "You stay out of our euros." And Chief Adigwe said one word, "Enough." And Madhu stopped as though a hand had closed on his throat. The audit team had come in behind the chairman, 4 of them, calm and grey and carrying cases. One of them stepped forward. "Mr. Madhu," she said, "we have a court-backed authorization to search this branch, your office, and your desk, and to seize all documents relating to staff complaints. We will start with the locked lower drawer of your desk. You can hand over the key, or we can open it without you. The first option is better for you." The whole room watched Ifinyi Madhu understand that there was no floor left under him. For a moment, he looked as though he would run. Then his shoulders came down, and he reached into his pocket with a hand that had gone old and slow, and he held out a small key. They opened the drawer, and it was all there, exactly as Ikenna had bet his name it would be. Because men like Madhu never destroy, they hoard. A thick folder of complaint forms, dozens of them going back over a year, every one of them pulled from the box that was supposed to bring them to Owerri. The trainees with the sick mothers, Driver Sunday, Mama Grace. Voices that had thought they were screaming into nothing, and had been because one man had been standing at the mouth of the well, catching every cry and folding it into a drawer. And near the top, on its own, in handwriting, Adeyeze recognized before the auditor even read the date aloud, was a single form. 14th of March. Adeyeze made a small sound. Her hand went to her mouth. There it was. Her voice. The one she had been told was dead, was lost, was nothing. It had not been dead. It had been in a drawer the whole time, 8 steps from her desk, while the man who took it sat there every day and watched her, believe she had screamed for nothing. "This one," the auditor said, lifting the March form gently, "is exactly why we are here." She looked at Adeyeze. "You wrote this?" Adeyeze could not speak. She nodded. "It is not lost," the auditor said. "It was never lost. It is now in the official record, where it always should have been. And it will be acted on. What happened to Ifinyi Madhu happened the way real things happen. Not in a flash of lightning, but in the slow, grinding, satisfying turn of a system, finally working. He was suspended on the spot, walked out of the building, by the security men he had spent 9 years feeling superior to. The seized folder became the center of a formal investigation. Because the complaints included his physical assault on Ike in front of 30 witnesses, and his shoving of Adeyeze, and an old, recovered complaint of him putting his hands on her, the company's lawyers did not merely fire him. They referred the assault matters to the authorities, and they made sure, this time, that every date and every witness was on record, so that nothing could disappear into any drawer ever again. Ngozi, who had filmed a kneeling man for sport and laughed loudest, was not walked out, but she sat through a disciplinary hearing with her eyes on her hands, and the laughter was finished in her for a long time. And Mama Grace, the cleaner he had called a useless old woman in front of clients, stood quietly in the corner of the lobby and watched the security men take Madhu out through the glass doors, and she did not gloat. She just pressed her lips together and nodded. Once, slowly, the nod of a person who has waited a long time to see a thing set right and has half stopped believing she ever would. You would think that would be the happy ending. The bad man punished, the buried voices raised, the kind ones rewarded, and it was, all of that was true. But there was one person in that lobby for whom the reveal was not a victory at all. Adeyeze Nwankwo stood in the middle of it, in the noise and the movement, and the relief breaking over the office like water, and she was not relieved. She felt as though the floor had been taken out from under her, along with Madhu's, because she was doing the arithmetic, and the arithmetic hurt. The night she had pressed ice to his cheek, he had known. The day she had thrown her job in front of a powerful man's fist to protect him, twice he had known. Every conversation on the stairwell, every shared lunch, every honest, unguarded thing she had told this struggling trainee about her dead father and her 4 siblings and the salary that ran out by the 20th, all of it, she had given to a man who was watching her from behind a name she did not know he had, like a man behind a one-way mirror. She had been so careful. She had judged no one for being poor. She had been good to him precisely because he had nothing, and he had everything. When the worst of the commotion had passed, when the auditors had moved their search up to Madhu's office, and the clients had been quietly seen out, and the floor had begun the strange business of going back to normal, Ikenna found her by the reception desk, where she had not moved. "A daze," he said. She looked at him. Her eyes were dry, which was somehow worse than tears. "All this time," she said. Her voice was very quiet. "When I gave you the file because you couldn't find it, when I told you not to mind them, when I stood in front of that man and felt my own knees shaking, twice, because I thought you had no one in the world to stand for you." She drew a breath. "You had all of this. You had your father. You had the whole company. You were never the man I thought I was protecting. You let me believe a story. You let me give my real self to a costume." "A daisy, I was going to tell Yo." "When?" she said, and now there was an edge. "After how many more times I made a fool of myself for you. You asked me about my complaint, the 14th of March. You looked me in the eye and asked me the date and let me think it was a kind man's encouragement, and all the time you were holding a thread you knew led straight into that drawer. You knew. You knew the whole time, and you let me keep being the small one in the story who doesn't know what is really going on." He had no defense because she was right. And the worst part of being a careful man is knowing exactly when carefulness has become a kind of lie. "You are right," he said. "All of it. I told myself I was protecting the plan. Protecting the other people whose letters brought me here. And that part was real. But it is also true that I let you keep believing something false, long after I knew it was hurting you. I took away your right to choose what you were walking into. That was not mine to take." He paused. "I am sorry. Not the kind of sorry that is asking for something. The kind that is just true." Adaze looked at him for a long moment. "I need to not see your face for a while," she said. "Can you give me that?" "Yes," he said. "Anything you want." She turned and walked back to her desk. And she sat down, and she did not cry there either. Because she had learned a long time ago how to hold things until she got home. And Ikenna, Adigwe, watched her go and understood that he had found the rot in his father's company and pulled it out by the root, and in the same motion had broken the one clean thing he had found in the whole building. The fixing of the Enugu branch did not wait for anyone's broken heart to mend. Within 2 weeks, on Chief Adigwe's direct order, the complaint system was rebuilt from the ground up. The boxes were gone. In their place was a confidential line that went to an independent office in Owerri, an office that answered to no branch manager and could not be emptied by any local hand. Every recovered complaint from Madhu's drawer was investigated, properly, one by one. Driver Sunday got the back pay for every night he had washed a car that was not company business. The trainees with the sick mother got a written apology and, more than that, a guarantee in writing that overtime would be paid and that no one could keep them past hours for work that could wait. This was the part that Ikenna cared about most, in the end, and it was the part nobody filmed. It is satisfying to watch one wicked man walked out of a building. It is rarer, and it matters more, to watch the door he came through get bricked up so the next one cannot use it. A bad man removed is a relief, a system fixed so that the next bad man has no room to grow. That is justice. The first feels good for a day. The second protects people who will never even know their protection has a name. And Adeze, in all of this, was not forgotten. But she was also not bought. Chief Adigwe, who had heard the whole story from his son and had drawn his own conclusions, did a careful thing. He had Adeze transferred to head office in Owerri, not as a favor to his son, but because the woman who had explained the entire mechanism of office cruelty on a stool with melting ice, the woman who had thrown her livelihood in front of power twice without flinching, was exactly the kind of person you put in charge of building a new complaints system. He gave her a real role, with real authority, in the very office that now received the confidential reports. He gave her, in other words, the power to make sure that no other woman's voice would ever again sit dead in a drawer 8 steps from her desk, while the man who took it watched her grieve it. He did not tell her his son had anything to do with the transfer, because his son had asked him not to, and for once Ikenna had asked for something not to happen rather than to happen. It took Adeze 3 weeks to be ready to look at Ikenna's face. In those 3 weeks, she did a thing that he did not do for her and could not have done for her, she thought. She went back over every conversation, slowly the way she had taught him to go back over events, with the feelings set aside and only the facts laid out, and here is what she found when she was honest. The kindness had not been fake. She kept testing it for fakeness, and it kept passing. He had never once in all those weeks tried to impress her. A man pretending to be poor to win a woman would have hinted at his real wealth, dropped clues, set up a reveal that made him the hero. He had done the exact opposite. He had hidden it, even when hiding it cost him, even when it would have been easy and flattering to let it slip. He had listened to her talk about being broke, without ever once making her feel he was slumming it. And when she had thrown herself in front of Madhu, he had not enjoyed the rescue fantasy of it. He had been distressed. He had told her she should not have done it. He had been more worried about her job than about his own dignity. That was not the behavior of a man playing a game with her. That was the behavior of a man who had genuinely forgotten, for a while, that he was anybody at all, and had been quietly grateful to a woman for letting him. The lie was real and it had hurt, and she did not have to pretend it away. But the man underneath the lie was also real, and she had not been wrong about him. Both things were true. She had spent years sorting people into kind and unkind, and here was a person who had done an unkind thing for an understandable reason and was honest about it being unkind. And that, she realized, was not the same as a cruel man. The world was bigger and stranger than her 2 boxes. On a Thursday, in the head office in Owerri, a message came to her new desk. "Please come to the chairman's office." She took a breath and she went. When she opened the door, Ikenna was there, sitting, waiting. He stood up when she came in. For a moment, neither of them said anything, and the silence carried all 3 weeks of it. Chief Adigwe rose from behind his desk. "I will leave you two to talk," he said, and the old man walked out, and there was the smallest, driest hint of a smile on his face as he passed his son. Because fathers are like that. Ikenna did not rush at her with apologies. He had learned, finally, that words were not the currency she trusted. So he did the thing she had taught him on the stool with the ice. He put a record in front of her. It was a single page from his report, the one he had written in the 2nd week. He slid it across the desk to her, and she read it. "I am removing myself from any assessment of the records unit, where Adeze Nwankwo works, to avoid bias. My feelings about her conduct cannot be allowed to influence my report on this branch." The date at the top was 3 weeks before the reveal. 3 weeks before he had any reason to perform anything for her, because she had not even known he was anyone, because there was no audience, no game, no advantage. It was a private wall a private man had built around a feeling he had not yet admitted to himself. "I wrote that," he said quietly, "long before that lobby." when no one was watching, when it could win me nothing. I am not showing it to you to be forgiven. I am showing it to you because you taught me that feelings can be argued with forever, but a record cannot. So here is my record. Whatever else was a lie, this was true before I knew it was true. Adaze read it again. Then she set it down on the desk, very carefully, the way you set down something that turns out to matter. You still should have told me, she said. I know. You took away my choice. I will always know that you did that. I know that too, and I will spend a long time being careful never to do anything like it again. She was quiet for a while. Then, she said the thing she had worked out alone over 3 weeks. Said it plainly, because plain was how she did everything. I was angry, she said. I am still a little angry. But I sat with it, and I could not make the kindness into a lie, no matter how I tried. You never once tried to impress me. A man playing a game would have. You hid the thing that would have made me admire you, even when hiding it hurt you. That is the opposite of a trick. She met his eyes. I think you forgot who you were for a while. And I think you needed to. And I think the man you were, when you forgot, is the man I was being kind to. So, I forgive you. Something went out of Ikenna's shoulders that he had been carrying for 3 weeks without knowing. But, she said, and lifted one finger, the records officer in her, never far away. I am putting it on the record. Do not ever build me a costume again. Do not ever decide for me what I am allowed to know. If you cannot tell me a thing yet, you say, I cannot tell you this yet, and you let me choose whether to wait. You do not let me walk around inside a lie, because you have decided it is for my own good. Are we understanding each other? She had used his old supervisor's words on purpose, and the corner of her mouth moved. Ikenna actually laughed, the first real laugh in 3 weeks. Yes, sir, he said. They did not rush after that. He courted her the slow way, the only way she would have accepted, in a city where she now had her own work that mattered, and her own standing that had nothing to do with him. She built the new complaints office into something feared by exactly the right people, and trusted by exactly the right ones. Reports that would once have died in a drawer now reached a woman who had felt, in her own body, what it cost to be ignored, and who therefore could not be bribed or bored into ignoring anyone. People at the bottom of the company learned her name the way you learn the name of a door that actually opens. Months passed. Her younger ones finished school terms. Her mother got better care than the salary that ran out by the 20th had ever allowed, though Adieze had insisted, fiercely, on paying her own way as far as her own way would stretch, and Ikenna had learned not to fight her on it, because her pride was not foolishness. It was the same spine that had stood up in the lobby. And then, one evening, in a quiet restaurant where the only other sound was a slow song and the clink of glasses, Ikenna Adigwe stood up from the table and went down on one knee. It was not lost on either of them, the shape of it. The last time the whole world saw this man on one knee, he had been wiping a floor in a torn shirt, being told that kneeling was all his hands were good for. Now he knelt of his own choosing, in front of a woman who had once put her whole life between him and harm, when she thought he was nothing. The first thing you ever did for me, he said, was wait for the cleaner to finish answering you. Everyone else walked past her like she was furniture. You stopped, and you waited, and you actually listened. I think I started loving you that morning, and it took me weeks to know it. He opened a small box. You were good to me when you thought I had nothing. You stood in front of a powerful man's fist for a trainee who could give you nothing back. You taught me on a stool with a cloth of melting ice. More about justice than every lawyer my father has ever paid. And when you found out I had lied to you, you did not run, and you did not pretend it away. You sat with it, and you sorted the true from the false with your own hands. And you chose me on purpose, with your eyes open, which is the only way I ever wanted to be chosen by anybody. His voice was not quite steady. I spent my whole life being seen as a name and a company. You are the only person who saw the man before she ever saw the name. Marry me. Let me spend the rest of it being known by you. Adeze Nwankwo, who had taught herself a long time ago to hold things until she got home, did not hold this one. Yes, she said. Yes, I will marry you. He slid the ring onto her finger and stood, and pulled her into him, and the few people in the restaurant smiled and clapped, not knowing the half of it, not knowing about the water poured on the clean floor, or the complaint that came back from the dead or the page. In a report that proved a feeling had been true before anyone was watching. 3 months later, they married in a hall in Owerri full of family and friends, and a surprising number of people from the very bottom of Adigwe Holdings, because Adeze had insisted that Driver Sunday be there, and Mama Grace, who cried more than anyone and kept saying she had always known that boy was good. Chief Adigwe watched his son and his new daughter dance, and the old man, who had sent a boy to find a sickness, found that what the boy had brought home in the end was not just a cleaned-out branch, but a person, a whole, fierce, honest person, who would keep the company human long after the old man himself was gone. He had been looking for someone to fix his company. He had found someone to be its conscience. A quick word before you go. The cruelty Adeze and the others faced in that office, the buried complaints, the man who used a job as a weapon, the way fear can make a whole room go quiet while one person is humiliated. These are not only things that happen in stories. They happen in real workplaces, to real people, more often than most of us would like to believe. And the rules that are supposed to protect workers, the channels that are supposed to carry their voices, differ a great deal depending on where you live and work. If you or someone you care about is facing harassment, abuse, or exploitation on the job, please do not look for your answer in a comment section under a video. Speak to someone who can actually act. In the United States, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, exists for exactly this, and a local legal aid clinic can help you understand your rights wherever you are. I am not a lawyer, and nothing in this story is advice. I am only someone who wanted to tell a story about human dignity, and to say one thing plainly, the way Adeze would. Your worth was never in your salary, your uniform, or what anybody decided you were born to be. Real class is character, and no one, no matter how big his office, has the right to make you kneel.